When did you know you wanted to be a teacher? I've been wondering.
Wow. I would say really at a very early age. I was the kind of kid who, when parents needed a babysitter, I was the one who would, happily volunteer to babysit. So I'm thinking being around kids and handling kids at an early age is probably my first impulse. But then when it came to, so what do you do after you finish high school?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? And the choices that were really there for me. Teaching was the one that was, I'm going to say, opened the widest. Meaning that a lot of the people that I saw in jobs that I would consider role models, were my teachers. So I followed that.
What was it like to be a teacher?
Wonderful, and I sincerely mean that. And especially after you have time to reflect upon what it really means to be a teacher and what it meant to the parents and the children that I taught. It really was a wonderful experience. But when I think in terms of giving to others, and especially giving, to students and back to the community, and knowing that without teachers we would really not have what I consider the kind of society that we have been able to build. So, yeah, teaching is the kind of job that prepares you for a lot of different other careers.
True. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, other careers can help prepare you for teaching, because particularly in different subjects, you can bring that into the classroom. But so we are going to try to make some sense of early childhood education, which is one of those issues in Virginia that I think sometimes we should be providing it more because it's such clearly an important thing, but for some reason we don't. Mm-hmm. And Tammie, you were saying earlier that for your own children, there was not an opportunity to have any pre-K sort of experience.
That's correct. Pre-K was not offered to any of my children, and my oldest are 29 and my youngest is 15, so that's the age range. So I still have one that's in Prince George County Public Schools, which I love, by the way. Mm-hmm. But no, it was not offered, and I think it would have been definitely to his advantage to have had pre-K offered. I chose to stay at home with him when he was born. My other children I put through daycare, and I think there's benefits to both. Mm-hmm. When you stay at home versus when you put, because in daycare he learned the classroom style.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Of you need to sit down, and even just having that little bit of pre-K, I think it prepares them for what to expect, to go in with other children their age, learning to listen to the teacher. Mm-hmm. and sit down and have that mm-hmm. early education, those foundations. And to even take that further, I would love to see foreign language introduced at a much earlier age, but that's maybe a topic for another day.
That's true.
And in our case, we have one child, and he did have a lot of pre-K experience. I think it definitely helped him be more ready for elementary school mm-hmm. and be more successful later on with that. So mm-hmm. for us, the availability in our county of having it available to us made a big difference, I think. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when you were teaching, you weren't teaching pre-K?
No, but I taught kindergarten.
You did go kindergarten, so you saw right
in the beginning.
Directly, oh.
Yes, the difference between kids who had the pre-K experience
right.
and the difference between the ones who had either none, absolutely none, meaning that they were in a babysitting situation as opposed to being at home with a parent who was teaching them some of the things that they would need once they entered kindergarten. Mm-hmm. And that early experience taught me, or showed me, I should say, the importance of having some structured learning mm-hmm. at a very early age. And not only the socialization that happens in pre-K and kindergarten, but also the academics that's taught.
Right.
Because when they say that children are sponges at that age, it is so true. Right. It is just absolutely true. There is not because I've taught more than kindergarten, but there is not an age where children are more, first of all, excited to learn, and then being able to retain what they learn for a longer period of time. So pre-K education is something that I'm definitely a supporter of.
Right.
And I look forward to hopefully working with the First Lady here in Virginia on her pre-K initiative.
Right. And I've been, one of the benefits I have, because I do a lot of video production as a freelancer, is I find myself at a lot of conferences and things. And I was at a brain health conference recently. And the importance of that early, and not just education, but early development, early being freed from trauma, or if you had experienced trauma as a young child, having the resources to help overcome it. Anyway, I feel like the science about that is now catching up to what teachers like you have known probably for decades.
Very true.
And that the science is now becoming clear that we need to be supportive, and not just to, the handful of people that can afford it, but to everybody in Virginia.
I agree. I think that we are starting to respect the brain as an intricate part of our whole selves, and knowing that when we're teaching, that we really are addressing, yes, the whole child, but specifically that part of the child, that part of the body. And I think that science in that way is now showing us that at certain ages and stages of development, that the brain is ready to receive more information and retain it than it is at other times. So I think that, like you say, for the longest time we used the phrase, kids are like sponges. Well, now we're really finding out that that is the period when the brain is at the place where it is ready to absorb more information than any other time. So.
And certainly a later intervention, if a student's struggling and falling behind, intervening later with extra help and tutors and things can make a difference and should be done, but it is much more effective to address it early on like that.
Yes. And even what you said about overcoming traumas. Yes. That you find that the earlier you address it, and how do I want to say, make the child understand that it really is a psychological thing that they're experiencing, then you have a higher chance of helping them walk through what might turn out to be a PSTD experience.
I think in general that's true. I'm older than you are, but probably even in your generation as well, there was a certain you don't talk about trauma, and you don't get help, and you don't. It's like, that's back there. I know my own mother had 6 kids, and had the struggles that brings to anyone who has 6 kids, or any kids really. She didn't get a lot of support from her peers or from her own mother, or it was like and that sort of attitude we apply sometimes to young kids. So,
that you just quote unquote handle it. And that's not always the solution.
It's kind of taught to us in the very beginning, because as mothers who experience postpartum depression, it wasn't as well received or understood as it is now. And so you got those messages early on that you just need to keep it to yourself. You need to just stop the crying and get over it. But now it's much more understood that it's pretty debilitating.
So my mother would sometimes, call her mother. She's having a bad day with all these kids. And apparently my grandmother would say, well, no one told you to have 6 kids. Which I thought was kind of cold,
solution.
man. Let's try to be a little more.
But
my grandmother was known as a straight shooter, so.
Yes.
Well, and as mothers, we wear so many hats. We we're the super women. We do everything for the family. So.
And I feel a little bit like the same way the science about the brain is catching up, I feel like our understanding of the importance of that social and emotional learning in students is catching up. And I kind of think teachers like you probably knew that, but in many ways, it's hard to do in a classroom to address all of that. I'm sure all of you always try your best, but there aren't resources, there aren't time, there isn't. So it's good to see that that's being understood better now in our education.
Well, I agree. When you're in a classroom with 20 to 25 kids, you know that you're dealing with lots of different, personalities and lots of different issues, and how they handle either a social situation or how they, and especially I will say, how they react to their own peers. And yes, you as a teacher, you understand the best way to address a kid's reaction based on their personality. And a lot of children, you can simply talk them through a situation and you won't see it repeated again. But then there are other kids that you really need to modify their behavior. And you try to do it in the most constructive way. And a lot of children will respond to, like positive reinforcements with, back in the day with stickers. But then there are other times when, you really have to pull the parents into the situation. And that's the only time that the kids will respond.
Right.
So I think we're catching up with that.
And I guess the other issue is, because we'll go back to your experience with it not being offered, and whereas in other counties, like the county I live in, it's more readily available. But in any case, there are a lot of situations where it's available for a lot of money. Some people argue that the evidence, the research on pre-K education is not always showing long-lasting effects, and research like that can be difficult, and there are some mixed results and all that. But if it really wasn't worth it, families that can afford it pay as much as $30,000 a year for it, so it's got to be worth something. I mean, in some ways.
It is. Yes.
So how do you think we can get people in Virginia to start to see it as something that we need to have universal access to, that we need more people to have access to it? Not just from the perspective of it's more effective that way and our school system would perform better that way, but just it's more fair that way.
We elect candidates like Virginia,
Right.
who is running for the Senate.
Right.
Yes.
I really think it begins there, because we need to elect our representatives who are going to have a variety of backgrounds in which to pull information from. Virginia having this background in teaching is desperately needed in our General Assembly, and I think that her voice will definitely help to put us on a path to knowing what is it that we need to even do, because sometimes as parents you don't really know what to do, and you kind of look for your locality to kind of provide opportunities for your children. So, but those opportunities aren't there if they are not funded. Which is definitely a local issue, but it's also a state issue too. So that's number one, elect Virginia.
But that's the failure of the state to understand that the difference in localities, and that we can't just rely on what the local resources are to provide. Otherwise, you're having this cycle where a county gets into some kind of economic difficulty, it starts to struggle, resources get cut, things get cut, and then it's just downward.
Very true. That's why I think the preschool initiative is so very, very important to have the complete funding for. When you were talking, I thought about the Virginia preschool initiative that has a cutoff based on family income. And I was speaking with a lady last Sunday who said to me, why are they trying to charge me to send my 3-year-old to school? And at first I was a little baffled, because I thought she must have meant she was trying to get her into private school. But no, she meant that they had gone to see if they could qualify for the Virginia Preschool Initiative. Well, fortunately and unfortunately, their income was too high to get their preschool into the program. And that's why I feel like having the pre-K initiative funded so that it would open up to all 3-year-olds in the state of Virginia. That is, to me, that's a game changer. Because I can state unequivocally that having preschool education definitely changes the outcome of a child's life, the career path, the choices that they make, their understanding of just how to interact with with their peers. So, yes, parents would pay $30,000 or more.
If they had it.
Yeah, if they had it.
Oh, I would have.
Yeah.
I definitely would have.
Yes, yes. Because we realize that as our children grow, that education becomes more competitive. And you want your child to have that competitive edge so that, that they can compete, not only with their own peers, but now throughout the world. Because it is, it's an open avenue now.
And we've seen that across the country, that premium of getting that extra training, the credential, the degree beyond high school makes a big difference in lifetime earnings.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
And the other thing about not having an income cutoff on the pre-K or preschool, I do think, like I was saying earlier, some of the research might show different impacts and different things. But I think the research is pretty consistent that if you have schools and educational settings that have income diversity in them, all students perform better.
Absolutely.
That's a better learning environment for all students.
Absolutely.
And so, as opposed to a learning environment that's concentrated with high poverty rates. So you definitely want to build every level of your system with that kind of income diversity. It's better for everybody.
And my first few years of teaching was in a school where it was considered a model school, where they drew kids from all parts of the city. And it was diverse in many different ways. And in that particular setting, the kids learned more from each other.
Yes.
Yes, than we as adults would think that they're learning. And including also learning how to respect each other. And, not, I'm going to say not being as judgmental as they might have been had they been in a setting where it was just one particular group, or everybody reflected each other.
And do you feel like in that setting you had all of the, did you have, you had great teachers, you had good leadership from the principal, you had good, was it well resourced?
Yes.
The physical infrastructure was, you weren't like leaky roofs and that kind of thing?
No. We were very fortunate in that we had the support of, first of all, the school district, and then we had, as you said, the administrative support. We had great parental involvement whenever there was a need for any additional just technology or books or field trips or whatever, that we had parents who would either step up and help out a kid who may or may not have been able to afford it. And we tried several times to take that model and put it into other schools.
That's, in some ways, one of the biggest issues. Is that's the question a lot of people sometimes put out as a challenge, is sort of scaling things up. Sometimes it's easy to really, if you focus on one school or one part of a school and you concentrate resources, you'll get results. But it can be more difficult to scale up. But it certainly can be done. It just maybe is not as easy as you might think it is. But.
Exactly. Even if it meant more schools with fewer kids. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah. That not only stop looking at the school building as the only place where learning happens,
Right.
but use some of the existing buildings already in your neighborhoods
Right.
as school settings.
Right.
That's one way that
We
I
don't-
think it could be
We
done.
don't have a lot of examples of that in Virginia, but I agree with you. That's a good approach to take.
Mm-hmm.
Very promising.
I think it's so important to expose our young children, particularly young children, expose them to diverse individuals, persons of all color,
Right.
all socioeconomic backgrounds. I think it really makes a difference as they get older that we are more tolerant of one another.
Right.
If we only go to school with people that look like us, that's
Or think like
or
us.
think like us,
Right.
Yeah.
or think like us. We need to be more understanding that not everyone has the life we have,
Very
and
true.
so so we need to make sure that our kids,
Right.
particularly at a young age, have those opportunities to learn kindness,
Right.
to learn tolerance. I think that's so important. I think we would be much nicer to one another if that was
Yeah.
the case. And I do think that has happened.
Right.
I went to Powhatan. I grew up in Powhatan, went through all of my years in Powhatan. And I do think that it has gotten a little better than because I have vivid memories of my parents owned a business, and so I have vivid memories of people coming into the business, and particularly older white men talking a particular way, and it was just like done all the time.
Right.
But I've noticed as we've gone through the years that particularly younger children are more open-minded, I think,
Right.
and that understand that that's really not nice. We don't really talk that way.
Right.
So I think it's getting better. I would just like to see it move along a little faster.
Yes.
So true.
And I think schools can often be a relatively safe space for that kind of community discussion and that kind of I don't want to say confrontation, but that kind of a discussion that you need to have, a conversation you need to have between people. And in some ways, if it's in the context of the family, someone who has racist views that they feel comfortable expressing, they're not comfortable expressing from because they understand there's something wrong about it. So it's important that schools create that space, prevent bullying, stand up for students' rights,
Very true.
and help build a better community that way.
Very true. Very true. The school setting is a very unique place in that, you can have these kinds of conversations because kids really are, the very young kids, they are truly accepting of whatever or whoever is in front of them, and they accept them as they are, and even in middle school and high school, when kids start to get more curious, they want to hear different opinions and different ideas about who other people are.
Right.
So I think that having a discussion or making a safe place in high schools and middle schools where kids really can openly discuss things that they are confused about,
Right.
or opinions that they've heard that they want to hear someone else's idea on it, and especially when it comes to things like race and just income inequality. And well, there again, the schools are they are a place where these kinds of discussions can happen and should be happening. But I would suggest it start with the kids and then bring the parents in.
That probably makes sense. Yeah, I think we often, education debates, not just in Virginia, but around the country, focus on test scores and the whole academic side and college readiness. And then you get a second kind of debate about career readiness and workforce skills. And those are two of the real mission of any school system. But the third one is citizenship, and it's respect, and
It is.
It's that whole set of social skills that we all need to develop to have stronger communities. And that kind of gets left off the agenda sometimes. But in the end of the day, those skills are also about workforce readiness. It's also about being able to thrive in any organization
Yes.
and in any career path.
It is. So it is. It's something that, should be developed into the curriculum.
Right.
And maybe it's not coming to me right now, but I know that Governor Northam has decided that looking at and understanding race relations
Right.
should be a part of, the daily studies within our public schools.
Right.
And I agree with it. So if it becomes a class that you are required to be a part of, then that would be one way to open up the discussion.
Oh, yeah.
I had always thought that at least starting in pre-K, my suggestion was that there should be an African American hero or heroine that's introduced to the kids each month, so that we are not always left with the same Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass, Martin Luther King. There are so many other contributions that have been made by African American scientists, African American artists, musicians, that kids from other cultures never have the opportunity to even learn about or hear their names.
Right.
So that's just my spiel.
I would love to have that for all ethnicities, to be honest, all races. So to include more Asian history and include more indigenous history, and have that be a part of the mandatory curriculum, that be included, maybe twice a month, just some type of additional education.
It is, yeah.
So I would love that.
And I think some of our historically black colleges and universities have that in the curriculum, and so that schools of education there probably would be a good place to sort of lead this broadening of the curriculum we have through our K through 12 in Virginia. I was going to say one thing, because I was going to make a suggestion. We all stop referring to as K-12, and we talk about P-12. And we get the idea in everyone's idea that that's the universal, and maybe even go beyond that, because I agree, not everyone is going to thrive in college, and not everyone's going to be the right choice.
That's right.
But there is a lot of projections that talk about you need a couple years at least of postgraduate or post-secondary training, credentialing, and so. And so P14, P16, let's make sure that the opportunities to build the skills, to be the citizens that we all think we should be, we see them as universal.
Very true.
It starts here.
Right.
Yeah, that's a
P12.
great idea. I like that.
I will carry that.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
then the question is not whether we fully fund
Pre-K.
but are we funding it enough?
Yes.
Where can we make an improvement here? Where can we, everyone's on the time.
I agree.
That's such a simple idea, but it's huge in concept, because you're changing the mindset that it's earlier than kindergarten.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic idea.